Princess Nara stood at the edge of the great hall, watching as the mating ceremony continued without her. Her crystalline skin glowed a dull gray, the color of sadness and shame among her people. Around her, hundreds of beings from different planets filled the massive room. The air buzzed with excitement as males from across the galaxy chose their mates. This was her third year at the ceremony. 3 years of standing alone while others found partners. 3 years of watching her father's disappointed face from across the room. Her sister Yuna laughed nearby, her skin shining bright blue with happiness. A tall Korthak warrior had chosen her, his forearms wrapped around her small frame. Yuna's skin sparkled like diamonds when she was happy. It had always been that way for her. Still no one? Asked her cousin Bora, walking over with a drink in her hand. Bora's skin glowed soft pink, the color of contentment. A wealthy Gorvani merchant had picked her an hour ago. The gold jewelry covering his green scales clinked as he talked to other merchants nearby. No one, Nara said quietly, trying to keep her voice steady. Bora looked at her with pity. Maybe next year you are still young, but they both knew that wasn't the real problem. Age had nothing to do with why no one wanted Princess Nara. The problem was her gift, or her curse, depending on how you looked at it. Nara could feel what others felt. When someone was angry, she felt their rage burning in her chest. When someone was sad, tears would come to her eyes even if she had no reason to cry. When someone was afraid, her heart would race with terror that wasn't her own. Among the Velathi people, this was seen as weakness. Warriors should not feel what their enemies feel. Rulers should not be soft with sympathy for their subjects. The Velathi had built their empire by being strong, by taking what they wanted, by showing no mercy to those who opposed them. A princess who could feel everyone else's pain was not what they wanted in a leader. The ceremony will end soon, Bora said, looking around the room. Father will want to speak with you. Nara nodded, her stomach tight with worry. Emperor Daiho had been patient with her, but she could see that patience running out. A princess needed to marry and form alliances with other worlds. That was her duty. But how could she form alliances when no one wanted her? Across the room, her friend Hana danced with a Zenthari diplomat. His silver skin gleamed under the lights as he spun her around. Hana's skin showed rainbow colors, cycling through joy, excitement, and love. She had been chosen in the first hour of the ceremony. The music grew louder and more couples moved to the dance floor. Nara watched them, feeling their happiness wash over her in waves. It should have made her happy too, but instead it made her feel more alone. She was surrounded by love and joy, but none of it was for her. She decided to leave before the ceremony ended. It would be easier than standing there when the last songs played, and everyone realized she was the only one left without a partner. Nara made her way through the crowd, keeping her head down. Her skin stayed gray, marking her as the sad, unwanted princess. A few beings looked at her with curiosity, but no one tried to stop her or ask her to dance. The hallways of the palace were quiet, compared to the celebration in the Great Hall. Her footsteps echoed on the crystal floors as she walked toward her rooms. The walls were covered with paintings of great Velathi victories, of conquered worlds and defeated enemies. Her ancestors looked down at her with proud, hard faces. She wondered what they would think of her. A princess who felt too much, who could not be the cold, calculating ruler her people needed. In her chambers, Nara walked to the large window that looked out over the capital city. Millions of lights twinkled below, each one representing a life, a family, a story. Beyond the city, she could see the spaceport where ships from across the galaxy came and went. Her personal servant, an older Velathi woman named Inha, entered the room quietly. The ceremony is not over yet, Princess, Inha said gently. Perhaps you should return. There is no point, Nara replied, still looking out the window. No one will choose me. They never do. Inha came to stand beside her. The older woman's skin glowed soft yellow, the color of sympathy and care. Your gift is not a curse, Princess. Someday someone will see its value. When? Nara asked, her voice breaking slightly. When will someone want a princess who feels too much? Who cannot be cruel when cruelty is needed? Who cries when her enemies suffer? I do not know, Inha said honestly, but I believe that day will come. Nara touched the window, her hand leaving a small print on the cool surface. Father spoke to me yesterday. He said if no one chooses me this year, he will arrange a marriage himself. Someone will have to take me even if they do not want me. The thought made her skin flash red with anger and fear. To be given away like an unwanted gift, to spend her life with someone who saw her as a burden rather than a prize. Perhaps that would not be so bad, Inha said carefully. Not all arranged marriages are unhappy ones. But they are not chosen ones either, Nara replied. I watch the other couples, I feel what they feel for each other. There is something beautiful about being wanted, about being chosen freely. I fear I will never have that. Inha was quiet for a moment. Then she pointed toward the window, toward the spaceport in the distance. Do you see that ship landing now? The small silver one? Nara looked where she was pointing. A modest spacecraft was settling onto one of the landing pads, much smaller than the grand warships that usually visited their world. I heard news today, Inha said. A new species has joined the Galactic Alliance. They call themselves humans from a planet called Earth. That is their ship. Humans. Nara repeated the strange word. I have never heard of them. No one has. They are very new to our part of the galaxy. Some say they are weak because they do not arrive in great warships. Others say they bring gifts instead of shows of strength. Nara watched the small ship, curious despite her sadness. What kind of gifts? Art, I heard. Music, stories, things that touch the heart instead of showing power. For some reason, this interested Nara more than she expected. A species that valued art over warfare, stories over conquest. It seemed so different from everything she knew. Will they come to the palace? She asked. I believe so. Tomorrow, perhaps. They will want to meet with your father and the council. Nara nodded, still watching the ship. Maybe meeting new people would distract her from the disappointment of another failed mating ceremony. Maybe these humans would be different from the other species she had met. As she watched, small figures began moving around the ship, too far away to see clearly, but somehow the sight of them made her feel something she had not felt in a long time. Hope. 6 months had passed since the mating ceremony, and Princess Nara had almost forgotten about the small silver ship she had seen landing that night. Almost, but not quite. Sometimes she found herself looking toward the spaceport, wondering about the humans who had come from so far away. Today her wondering would finally end. The Great Hall had been prepared for a welcome ceremony, but it looked very different from the mating celebration. Instead of dancing and music, there were formal chairs arranged in perfect rows. Banners from different worlds hung from the ceiling, showing the symbols of the Galactic Alliance. Nara stood with the other members of the royal family, wearing her finest robes. Her skin glowed a neutral silver, the color she had learned to maintain during official events. It showed no emotion, revealed nothing about what she was thinking or feeling. Her father, Emperor Daiho, sat on his crystal throne, his own skin showing the deep purple of authority and power. Beside him, her mother, Empress Miho, displayed the gold of royal dignity. They looked exactly as rulers should look among the Velathi people. The doors to the Great Hall opened, and guards announced the arrival of the human delegation. Nara expected something grand. When the Korthak ambassadors had visited, they had marched in wearing battle armor, showing their strength. When the Zenthari diplomats came, they had floated in on hover platforms, surrounded by lights that showed their wealth. The Gorvani merchants had brought chests of rare gems and metals to display their resources, but the humans walked in quietly, wearing simple dark clothing. No armor, no floating platforms, no treasure chests. Just 5 beings who looked smaller and softer than most species Nara had met. The one leading them was a male, she could tell, though he looked very different from the males of other species she knew. He was not much taller than she was, with dark hair and brown eyes. His skin was a warm tan color that did not change or glow like hers did. He walked with confidence. But it was a different kind of confidence than she was used to seeing. Not the threatening confidence of warriors or the cold confidence of rulers. Something gentler but somehow stronger at the same time. As he came closer, Nara felt something strange happening. Her empathic abilities, which usually showed her simple emotions like anger, fear, or joy, were picking up something much more complex. This human's emotions felt like layers. On the surface, she sensed alertness and formal politeness, as expected, during a diplomatic meeting. But underneath she felt curiosity, genuine interest in learning about her people. Deeper still, there was something warm and caring, a concern for doing the right thing that went beyond just following orders. It was beautiful in a way she had never experienced before. The human delegation stopped in front of the throne, and the leader stepped forward. When he spoke, his voice was clear and respectful. "Your Imperial Majesty," he said, bowing slightly, "I am Ambassador Jiho Park, representing the United Earth Government and the human species. We are honored to be welcomed into the Galactic Alliance and to meet the great Velathi Empire." Emperor Daiho nodded formally. "Welcome, humans of Earth. We will hear what you have to say." What followed was unlike any diplomatic meeting Nara had ever attended. Instead of talking about military strength or trade agreements, Ambassador Jiho spoke about cooperation and understanding. He talked about learning from other cultures and sharing knowledge that could benefit everyone. Then came the gifts. The other human delegates brought forward simple boxes, not the elaborate chests or displays that other species used. When they opened the boxes, Nara gasped softly. Inside were works of art, paintings that showed landscapes from Earth, sculptures made from wood and stone, recordings of music that sounded like nothing she had ever heard. There were books filled with stories and poems written in languages that had been translated for the Alliance to read. "These represent the creativity of our people," Ambassador Jiho explained. "We believe that understanding how others see beauty and express their feelings helps us understand their hearts." Nara found herself leaning forward, fascinated. The emotions she sensed from the humans were so genuine, so warm. They truly believed that art and stories could build bridges between different worlds. After the formal ceremony, there was a reception with food and drink. Nara moved through the crowd, listening to conversations between the humans and various Alliance representatives. The humans asked thoughtful questions about other cultures, showed genuine interest in learning about different ways of life. She was so focused on watching them that she did not notice the small table beside her until it was too late. Her elbow caught the edge, sending a glass of Velathi wine flying through the air. The purple liquid splashed across Ambassador Jiho's simple dark clothing, staining it badly. The entire conversation around them stopped. Nara felt her skin flash, bright red with embarrassment. Among her people, clumsiness was seen as weakness. She expected anger, disgust, or at least annoyance from the human. She braced herself for the negative emotions that would hit her empathic senses. Instead, Jiho looked down at his stained clothes and did something completely unexpected. He smiled. "Oh no," he said, his voice full of concern. "Are you hurt? Did any of the wine splash on you?" Nara stared at him, confused. No, I am not hurt. But your clothes can be cleaned," he said, pulling out a cloth to wipe at the stain. "I am more worried that you might have been cut by the glass or burned by the wine. Are you sure you are okay?" The emotions flowing from him were exactly what his words suggested. Real concern for her well-being, no anger about his ruined clothes, no embarrassment about being the center of attention, just genuine care for a stranger who had accidentally spilled something on him. Nara felt tears start to form in her eyes. When had anyone ever asked if she was hurt when something went wrong? Usually people just focused on the mistake she had made. "I am fine," she managed to say. "But I am very sorry about your clothes. I can have new ones made for you." "That is very kind, but not necessary," Jiho replied. "Accidents happen. No harm done." One of the other humans, a female with short brown hair, came over with more napkins. "Need help cleaning up?" she asked cheerfully. Within moments, several humans were helping to clean up the spilled wine and broken glass. They worked together easily, no one complaining or making Nara feel worse about her mistake. Their emotions stayed calm and helpful throughout. As they cleaned, Jiho continued talking to her as if nothing had happened. "This is beautiful wine," he said, examining the purple stain on his shirt. "The color is amazing. Is it made from fruit that grows on your world?" Soon they were having a conversation about Velothi agriculture and earth farming methods. Jiho asked intelligent questions and shared interesting information about how humans grew their food. His genuine curiosity made Nara feel comfortable in a way she rarely experienced with strangers. When the reception ended, Nara found herself thinking about the interaction for hours afterward. She kept remembering the way Jiho had smiled when she spilled wine on him, the way his first thought had been for her safety, rather than his ruined clothes. That night, she asked Inha to find her information about humans and their home planet, Earth. She wanted to understand these strange beings who seemed to care more about kindness than showing their strength. "Why the sudden interest, Princess?" Inha asked as she brought data tablets to Nara's room. "They are different," Nara said, not sure how to explain what she had felt. "Their emotions are not simple like other species. They are complex, like layers of music playing at the same time." Inha smiled. "That sounds like it would appeal to someone with your gift." Nara spent the night reading about Earth, about human history and culture. She learned about concepts that seemed foreign to Velothi: society, marriage based on love rather than politics, the idea that strength could come from protecting others instead of conquering them, art and music created just to bring joy, not to show power. Most interesting of all, she read about how humans valued something they called emotional intelligence, the ability to understand and respond to other people's feelings. For the first time in her life, Nara began to wonder if her empathic abilities might not be a curse after all. Maybe in the right place with the right people, they could be exactly what was needed. Princess Nara had become very good at disguising herself as a servant. She had learned to dim her natural crystalline glow and wear simple brown robes that made her look like any other palace worker. It was the only way she could attend the human, cultural presentations without causing a scandal. For 3 weeks, Ambassador Jiho and his team had been giving talks about human society to anyone in the palace who was interested. Most of the nobles stayed away, thinking it was beneath them to learn about such a weak species. But servants, lower officials, and curious citizens filled the small meeting rooms every day. Nara sat in the back of each presentation, taking careful notes and trying not to draw attention to herself. What she was learning fascinated her more, each day. Today's topic was human courtship and marriage customs. On Earth, explained Dr. Suman Lee, a female human with kind eyes and graying hair, most people choose their own partners based on compatibility and affection. We call this dating, a process where 2 people spend time together to see if they want to share their lives. A Velothi servant raised her hand. But how do families form alliances? How do they strengthen political bonds? Dr. Lee smiled. We have found that marriages based on personal choice are often stronger and more stable than those arranged for political reasons. When people truly care for each other, they work harder to make their relationship succeed. Nara felt her heart beating faster as she wrote down these words. The idea of choosing your own partner, of marrying someone because you cared about them rather than because your families decided it was useful, seemed like something from a beautiful dream. Another presentation was about human concepts of strength and leadership. We believe that true strength comes from protecting others, not from conquering them, Ambassador Jiho explained to a mixed group of palace workers. A strong leader is one who serves their people, who makes decisions based on what will help everyone thrive. But how do you defeat your enemies if you are always thinking about protecting people? Asked a young Velothi guard. We have found that understanding our enemies often works better than simply fighting them, Jiho replied. When you understand why someone is angry or afraid, you can often solve the problem without violence. And when you do have to fight, people will fight much harder to protect something they love than to take something they want. These words hit Nara like a physical blow. Understanding why someone was angry or afraid, that was exactly what her empathic abilities allowed her to do. Among humans, this would be seen as a valuable skill, not a weakness. After the presentation, she lingered in the room, pretending to clean up while the humans packed their materials. She wanted to hear more, to understand how this different way of thinking could work. That's when Ambassador Jiho noticed her. "Excuse me," he said gently. "You have been to several of our presentations. Are you particularly interested in human culture?" Nara felt panic spike through her chest. Had he recognized her? She kept her head down and tried to make her voice sound like a simple servant's. "Yes, sir. It is very different from what I know. Very interesting." "What is your name?" he asked. She almost said, "Princess Nara," automatically, then caught herself. "Just Nara, sir." "Well, just Nara," he said, with a small smile. "I am glad you find our culture interesting. Is there anything specific you would like to know more about?" This was dangerous. She should excuse herself and leave. But the opportunity to ask real questions was too tempting. "The marriage customs," she said quietly. "How do people know if they are compatible?" Jiho sat down in one of the chairs, gesturing for her to sit as well. "That is a very good question. There are many things that can make two people compatible: shared interests, similar values, the ability to communicate well with each other. But what about practical things? What if one person has abilities that others see as problems? Every person has strengths and weaknesses," Jiho said thoughtfully. "In a good partnership, the people help balance each other. One person's strength can support the other person's weakness and vice versa." Nara felt her carefully controlled skin starting to show hints of color, gold around the edges, the color of hope. She quickly pulled her hood further over her head. What if someone could feel what other people feel? Would that be seen as useful or as a problem? Jiho's eyes lit up with interest. "Are you talking about empathy? The ability to understand and share other people's emotions?" "Something like that." "That would be incredibly valuable," he said immediately. "On Earth, we highly prize emotional intelligence. Leaders who can understand how their people feel, diplomats who can sense when negotiations are going well or badly, doctors who can tell when patients are hiding pain. These abilities make someone very special." Nara stared at him. "Really? Even if it means feeling sad when others are sad or angry when others are angry?" "Especially then," Jiho said firmly. "Someone who truly understands suffering can work harder to prevent it. Someone who feels others' joy can find better ways to create happiness. This kind of ability would be seen as a gift, not a curse." They talked for almost an hour, with Nara asking careful questions and Jiho giving thoughtful answers about human society. She learned about concepts that seemed magical to her: marriages where partners supported each other's dreams, leaders who made decisions based on empathy rather than power, communities that celebrated differences instead of demanding conformity. And the conversation continued. Nara found herself relaxing in a way she rarely did around strangers. Jiho's emotions remained consistently warm and curious. There was no judgment, no impatience, no hidden agenda, just genuine interest in helping her understand. "I should go," she finally said, realizing how long they had been talking. "I have duties to attend to." "Of course. But Nara?" He waited until she looked at him. "If you ever want to talk more about human culture, please find me. I enjoy our conversations." Over the following days, these conversations became a regular occurrence. Nara would finish her disguised attendance at cultural presentations, and then spend time talking with Jiho about human customs, beliefs, and values. She learned about human literature, stories about people who chose love over duty, who found strength and kindness, who changed the world through understanding rather than force. She learned about human music that was created to express emotions rather than to celebrate victories. She learned about human art that showed beauty in ordinary things, not just in displays of power. Most importantly, she learned about herself. You have a very thoughtful way of asking questions. Jiho told her one afternoon as they walked through the palace gardens. He had suggested the walk when he noticed her seeming tense during their indoor conversation. "I am curious about many things," she replied, keeping her voice carefully neutral. "Your curiosity reminds me of the best diplomats I have known," he said. "The ones who truly want to understand other cultures, not just use them for their own purposes." They had stopped beside a fountain where water fell in crystalline drops, creating music as it hit the pool below. Nara found herself staring at the water, thinking about how it adapted to whatever container it found itself in, while still remaining essentially water. "Jiho," she said carefully, "what would you think of someone who had to choose between duty to their family and following their own heart?" He was quiet for a long moment, and she could feel his emotions growing more serious. "I think," he said finally, "that the greatest service you can give to people you love is to become the person you are meant to be. Sometimes that means making difficult choices, but living as someone you are not helps no one in the long run." Nara felt her skin warming with gold again, the color of hope and possibility. That night, as she sat in her room reading human poetry that Jiho had shared with her, she realized something had changed inside her. For the first time in her life, she was beginning to believe that she might not be broken after all. Maybe she was just different. And maybe, in the right place with the right person, different could be exactly what was needed. The annual mating ceremony was only 2 months away, but for the first time Nara was not dreading it. She was planning for it. The 4th annual mating ceremony looked exactly like the previous 3, but everything felt different to Princess Nara. She stood in the great hall wearing her finest ceremonial robes, her crystalline skin carefully controlled to show neutral silver. Around her, hundreds of beings from across the galaxy waited to see who would choose whom this year. But this time, she was not waiting to be chosen. She was waiting for the right moment to make her own choice. Her father, Emperor Deho, had spoken to her that morning with barely controlled frustration. 3 years, Nara. 3 years of embarrassment. This year you will accept any reasonable offer that comes, do you understand? She had nodded and said yes because it was easier than arguing, but she had not promised to wait for an offer. The ceremony began with the traditional announcement of available partners. Nara listened as the Idio herald called out names and titles describing the political advantages each match would bring. Her own name was announced last, with a significantly increased dowry that made several alien males look at her with sudden interest. Through her empathic abilities, she could feel their emotions clearly. Greed from a Gorvani merchant who calculated how much wealth her dowry would bring. Cold ambition from a Korthak warrior who saw her as a stepping stone to more power. Indifference from a Zinthari diplomat who viewed her as just another political transaction. None of them felt even the slightest bit of genuine interest in her as a person. The human delegation sat in a special section for observers from new alliance members. Ambassador Jiho wore formal diplomatic clothing and maintained the polite, alert expression appropriate for such an event. But Nara could feel the complex layers of his emotions: curiosity about the ceremony, mild discomfort with the idea of people being traded like property, and something warmer that seemed to be directed toward her whenever their eyes met. Over the past 2 months, their friendship had deepened into something neither of them had openly acknowledged. Their conversations had become longer and more personal. Jiho had shared stories about his childhood on Earth, his hopes for building better relationships between species, his belief that understanding and kindness were more powerful than force. Nara had found herself sharing things she had never told anyone else. Her fears about her empathic abilities, her dreams of finding someone who would value her differences, her longing to be chosen freely rather than accepted reluctantly. They had never spoken directly about their feelings for each other, but the unspoken connection between them had grown stronger each day. Now, as the ceremony continued around them, Nara felt that connection like a golden thread pulling her toward a decision that would change everything. The first few matches were announced. Quickly, a Zenthari female chose a wealthy Gorvani male. 2 Korthak warriors selected each other in what would clearly be a military alliance. Other partnerships formed with the expected displays of political calculation. Then came the moment Nara had been dreading. I choose Princess Nara of the Velati Empire, announced Lord Keeman, a middle-aged Gorvani with expensive jewelry covering his green scales. Her dowry will complement my trading fleet nicely. The words hit her like ice water. Not, I choose Princess Nara because I admire her, or even because she is beautiful, just because her dowry would be useful for his business. Emperor Daiho stood to formally accept the match, relief clear on his face. Finally, his difficult daughter would be married off. But before he could speak, Nara stepped forward. I respectfully decline, she said clearly, her voice carrying across the suddenly quiet hall. The silence that followed was complete. In 400 years of Velati mating ceremonies, no one had ever declined a formal choosing. You cannot decline, Lord Keeman sputtered, his scales shifting to an angry red color. I have chosen you according to the laws. You are mine. The laws say you may choose, Nara replied, her skin beginning to glow with a steady golden light. They do not say I must accept. Emperor Daiho's voice cut through the hall like a blade. Nara, accept the match, now. She looked at her father, feeling his anger and embarrassment through her empathic senses. She felt her mother's shock, her sister's confusion, the excitement and scandal rippling through the crowd. But she also felt something else. From the human delegation section, she felt support, encouragement, and something that might have been pride. No, father, she said quietly but loud enough for everyone to hear. I will not accept a match from someone who sees me as a business transaction. The hall erupted in chaos. Lord Keeman demanded compensation for the insult. Other potential suitors began withdrawing their interest, not wanting to be associated with scandal. Velati nobles called for Nara to be stripped of her title. Through it all, Nara walked steadily across the great hall toward the observer section. Her skin glowed brighter with each step, cycling through gold, then white, then colors that no one in the hall had ever seen a Velati display. She stopped in front of Ambassador Jiho, who had stood when he saw her approaching. His emotions were a complex mix of admiration, concern, and something deeper that made her heart race. The entire hall fell silent again as they realized what she was about to do. Ambassador Jiho Park of Earth, Nara said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. I have spent months learning about your people, your customs, your beliefs. I have learned that humans value choice, understanding, and partnerships built on mutual respect rather than political advantage. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of hundreds of stares, the shock of her family, the confusion of the crowd. Will you be my husband? The silence stretched so long that Nara began to fear she had made a terrible mistake. Maybe she had misunderstood their connection. Maybe he saw her only as an interesting alien to study, not as someone he could care about. Then Jiho stepped forward, his emotions blazing with warmth, determination, and something that felt remarkably like love. Princess Nara, he said clearly, I am honored that someone as brave and thoughtful as you would choose me. Yes, I will be your husband. Her skin exploded into brilliant gold, then shifted through colors that no Velati had ever displayed. Deep blues and purples mixed with silver and white, creating patterns like aurora lights dancing across her crystalline surface. The hall erupted again, but this time the chaos had a different flavor. Some beings called out in anger or shock, but others seemed fascinated by what they were witnessing. The other humans in Jiho's delegation were smiling, their emotions warm with approval. Emperor Daiho's voice boomed over the noise. This is not acceptable. You cannot marry outside your species without approval from the council. Actually, said a new voice from the entrance to the hall. She can. Everyone turned to see a group of humans entering, led by a man who looked similar to Jiho but older and more formal. His uniform marked him as high-ranking military. I am Admiral Minho Park, he announced, walking confidently into the center of the chaos. Ambassador Jiho's older brother and commander of the Earth Defense Fleet. Under Galactic Alliance law, any member species has the right to form interspecies marriages for diplomatic purposes. He looked directly at Emperor Daiho. Earth formally recognizes this union and is prepared to negotiate the appropriate treaties and agreements. Unless, of course, the Velothi Empire wishes to reject an alliance with humanity. The threat was politely worded but unmistakable. Around Admiral Minho, other humans had taken positions that looked casual, but were clearly military formations. They were not threatening anyone directly, but the message was clear. Earth took the protection of its people's chosen families very seriously. Emperor Daiho looked around the hall, calculating quickly. A diplomatic crisis with a new species over his daughter's marriage would not serve the Empire well. And despite their modest appearance, there were rumors that humans were far more dangerous than they seemed. "Very well," he said finally, his voice tight with controlled anger. "If this is what my daughter chooses, the Velothi Empire will respect her decision." Nara felt relief flooding through her, mixed with residual anger from her father and confusion from the crowd. But the strongest emotion she felt came from Jiho, standing beside her with his hand gently touching her arm. Love. Pure, honest, freely given love. For the first time in her life, Princess Nara had been chosen by someone who truly wanted her, and more importantly, she had chosen someone who valued exactly the qualities that made her different. As the chaos continued around them, Jiho leaned close and spoke quietly in her ear. "Are you ready for the adventure of a lifetime?" he asked. Nara looked into his brown eyes, feeling his emotions blend with hers through her empathic gift, and smiled. "I have been ready my whole life," she replied. 3 days after Princess Nara's shocking choice at the mating ceremony, the Velothi Empire found itself in the middle of a diplomatic crisis that no one had expected. Emperor Daiho sat in his private chambers, staring at reports from across the galaxy. Word of his daughter's unprecedented decision had spread faster than light-speed communication could carry it. Every species in the Galactic Alliance was talking about the Velothi princess who had refused tradition and chosen a human husband. Some called it romantic, others called it scandalous, but everyone was talking about it. More concerning were the messages arriving from other empires. The Korthak Confederation was demanding an explanation for why their warriors had been rejected in favor of weak humans. The Gorvani Trade Guild was threatening to reconsider their commercial agreements. Several smaller species were questioning whether Velothi leadership was becoming unstable, but it was the latest intelligence report that truly worried the Emperor. "Sir," his military advisor General Donghyun said, entering the chamber with a datapad, "we have received new information about human military capabilities." Daiho looked up from his brooding. "What kind of information?" "The kind that suggests we may have seriously underestimated them." General Dongyun's skin showed the dark blue of concern as he handed over the pad. "Our spies have been monitoring Earth's communication network since the marriage announcement. What they found is disturbing." The Emperor read through the report, his own skin gradually shifting from purple authority to red alarm. According to the intelligence, humanity's modest diplomatic approach had been hiding military capabilities that surpassed most known species. Their small ships were not signs of weakness, but of efficiency. They had developed technology that packed enormous power into compact designs. Their focus on cooperation was not softness, but a strategic approach that had unified their entire planet under a single government. Most importantly, their emotional intelligence and empathy, traits the Velothi had always seen as weaknesses, had made them incredibly effective at psychological warfare and strategic planning. They understood their enemies so well that they could predict and counter their moves before battles even began. "There's more," General Donghyun said grimly. "We intercepted a communication from Admiral Minho Park to Earth's High Command. They have classified Princess Nara as a human family member under their protection protocols. Any action taken against her will be considered an act of war against Earth itself." Emperor Daiho felt a chill run through his crystalline spine. He had been so focused on the embarrassment of his daughter's choice that he had not considered the larger implications. "How many ships does Earth have?" he asked quietly. "We don't know. That's the problem. Their diplomatic vessels appear to be their smallest and least armed. Intelligence suggests they have much larger fleets that have never been seen outside their home system." Before the Emperor could respond, another aide rushed into the chamber. "Sir, Princess Nara and Ambassador Jiho are requesting an audience. They say it's urgent." Daeho sighed deeply. "Send them in." When Nara entered the room, she looked different than she had 3 days ago. Her skin glowed with steady confidence instead of nervous silver. Beside her, Jiho maintained his diplomatic composure, but the Emperor could sense the protective energy radiating from the human. "Father," Nara said, bowing respectfully, "we have come to discuss the future." "The future?" Daeho repeated. "You mean the chaos you have created with your selfish choice?" "Not chaos," Jiho interjected politely but firmly. "Opportunity." He stepped forward, producing a data tablet of his own. "Emperor Daeho, with your permission, I would like to present a proposal that could benefit both our peoples." Despite his anger, Daeho's political instincts made him curious. "Speak." "Princess Nara has a unique gift," Jiho began. "Her empathic abilities, combined with human diplomatic techniques, could revolutionize interspecies relations. Instead of seeing her marriage to me as a scandal, consider it as the foundation for a new kind of alliance." "What kind of alliance?" Daeho asked suspiciously. Nara stepped forward, her voice clear and confident. "An alliance based on understanding rather than fear. I have been studying human methods, Father. They have achieved something remarkable. They unified an entire planet of different cultures and nations through cooperation instead of conquest. And you think this cooperation can work between species?" Daeho scoffed. "It already is working," Jiho replied. "In the 3 days since our engagement was announced, we have received communications from 17 different species expressing interest in learning more about human-Velothi cooperation. They want to see if this new approach can solve old problems." He activated his data tablet, showing a holographic display of communication logs. "The Zenthari Confederation wants help mediating a trade dispute. The Gorvani merchants are interested in human economic models. Even some Korthak clans are asking about human military strategies that win wars without massive casualties." Daeho stared at the display, his political mind working quickly. If other species were interested in this cooperation, there could be significant advantages for the Velothi Empire. "What exactly are you proposing?" he asked carefully. "Make me the first interspecies relations ambassador," Nara said. "Let Jiho and me travel between worlds, helping to solve disputes and build new kinds of alliances. Use my empathic abilities and his diplomatic training to create partnerships that benefit everyone." "And if I refuse?" Jiho's expression remained polite, but his voice carried an unmistakable edge. "Then Earth will formally request Princess Nara's transfer to human citizenship, and she will become our ambassador to the galaxy instead of yours. The choice is yours, Emperor." The threat was clear. Either the Velothi Empire could benefit from having the galaxy's first empathic diplomat, or they could lose her to humanity and watch Earth gain that advantage instead. Emperor Daeho looked at his daughter, really looked at her for the first time in years. Her skin was glowing with colors he had never seen before. Confidence, hope, determination, and something that might have been love. She was not the sad, broken princess who had failed at 3 mating ceremonies. She was something new, something powerful. "Very well," he said finally. "You have 6 months to prove this approach works. If you can show real results, the Empire will consider making your position permanent." Nara's skin exploded into brilliant gold. "Thank you, Father. You won't regret this decision." 6 months later, the wedding of Princess Nara and Ambassador Jiho took place on Earth, in a ceremony that was broadcast across the galaxy. Representatives from 43 different species attended, including Emperor Daeho himself. The ceremony blended Velothi crystal traditions with human flower customs, creating something beautiful and entirely new. As Nara and Jiho exchanged vows under Earth's blue sky, surrounded by beings from dozens of worlds, the princess reflected on how much had changed. Her empathic abilities, once seen as a curse, had helped resolve 3 major diplomatic crises and prevented 2 potential wars. The combination of her gift and human emotional intelligence had proven so effective that other species were requesting similar partnerships. Her sister Yuna had divorced her Korthak husband and was now studying human relationship models. Her cousin Bora had left her arranged marriage to pursue her own dreams of becoming an artist. Across the galaxy, the concept of chosen partnerships was spreading. "Do you ever regret it?" Jiho asked quietly as they danced at their wedding reception. "Giving up your life as a traditional princess?" Nara looked around at the celebration surrounding them. Humans danced with Velati, Gorvani merchants shared jokes with Korthak warriors, and Zenthari diplomats were learning Earth songs from human children. Her skin glowed with every color in her spectrum, creating patterns like living rainbows. "I didn't give up my life," she replied, pulling him closer. "I finally found it." As the celebration continued around them, wedding guests began sharing toasts from their different cultures. But the one that touched Nara most deeply came from her father. Emperor Daiho stood and raised his glass, his skin showing the deep purple of respect and the gold edges of pride. "To my daughter Nara," he announced, "who taught us that sometimes the greatest strength comes not from being chosen, but from having the courage to choose." The crowd cheered in dozens of different languages, but Nara barely heard them. She was too busy feeling the wave of love and acceptance washing over her from every being in the room. She had spent her whole life waiting to be wanted. She had never imagined that the real answer was wanting something for herself, and having the courage to ask for it. Years later, when their children played in gardens that bloomed with flowers from Earth and crystals from Velros, when their diplomatic successes had changed how species interacted across the galaxy, when other empathic beings came to them for training and using their gifts for peace instead of war, Nara would remember this moment. The moment when she stopped waiting to be chosen and chose her own destiny instead. And it had all started with a simple question: "Will you be my husband?" Sometimes, the most powerful words in the galaxy were also the simplest ones.